Hey everybody, Kevin P. McAuliffe here, and I'm one of the senior editors at MyJo in Toronto, and I am back again with another Digital Juice tutorial, and this time we're going to take a look at getting started with Ready2Go for Adobe's After Effects Part 2. Now, before we jump in and take a look at Ready2Go inside of Adobe's After Effects, of course, because this is a getting started video, I do want to remind you that if you haven't downloaded the most recent version of the Juicer, head on over to the Digital Juice website and download it. It is absolutely free for Windows, for Mac, and for Mac Snow Leopard users. And as of this recording, the most recent version of the Juicer is Juicer 3.81 build 108. So if you haven't downloaded it, head on over to the Digital Juice website, download it. It is absolutely free. Okay, so we're not going to spend too much time on the Juicer in this lesson. What we're going to do is we're going to export an element and we're going to get right into After Effects. And I thought, what better element to export than the one that you saw in my opening animation, which is, of course, from Ready2Go for Adobe's After Effects. So I'm just going to hide Firefox and I'm going to Command Tab into the Juicer. And the element that I used in the opening is right down here. It's called Flame Frames HD. And one thing I do want to point out is that I've already exported all of the fonts to go with all of the elements from Ready2Go for After Effects, as well as Ready2Go for Apple's Motion. But the Juicer is going to export that font as well as all the other elements. I just don't need to install it because I already have it installed on my machine. Okay, so let's get into exporting. And we remember from lesson 1, I'm just going to click on the After Effects logo and I'm going to say Collect Files. And it's going to ask me what type of file I want to export, what resolution. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to export 1920 by 1080 2397. And we're just going to make sure that we're going to the desktop, which we are, and I'm going to say Collect Now, and you'll see that in a matter of seconds, we're going to have all of the elements for Flame Frames ready to go on the desktop. And now, believe it or not, we're done inside the Juicer. So what I'm going to do is just hide the Juicer. And you can see on my desktop, I now have my Flame Frames folder, and inside it, I have all of the elements that go with this project. Now, one thing that I do want to point out before we get into After Effects is that you're going to notice something a little bit odd. You're going to notice that we have 2 animations for each element that has been exported from the Juicer. So for example, with this Motion Designer's Toolkit element, we have Rough Edges A _ PRX and Rough Edges A. Now that's a little bit strange, and you'll notice that the file size difference is actually quite big. We have 102 kilobytes versus 1.5 megabytes. Now I know you're thinking, well, 1.5 megabytes, that's not that much. But once we start getting into bigger projects that use larger objects, this is really going to become important, because basically what the team at Digital Juice has done is they've given you the main file that's going to be used for the render and a proxy file that's going to be used for you to work with and for you to preview. Now, what does that mean for you? Well, that means lightning fast previews, and then when you're ready to click render, then After Effects will switch over and use the full-size file. Like I said, in this project, it's not that much of a difference, but trust me, when you get into larger projects in After Effects, it's really going to speed up your workflow. Perfect example, let's take a look at Destruction A. The proxy file is 1.9 megabytes. Its corresponding file, full size, is almost 18 megabytes. So you can see that that's about, 1/9 the size of the big file. So this is really going to become important later on. Now what I've also done, just to sort of help us along here, if I come into my Elements folder, is I've exported this picture of this unbelievably stunning gentleman here. And I've also exported my Digital Juice logo that I'm going to use for the opening. And I've exported my Ready2Go projects and templates for Adobe's After Effects Collection 1 background that's also going to be used in this animation. So we're going to be able to go through and show you how I piece that opening together very quickly and very easily. So let me just close all the folders on the desktop, and we're now ready to get into After Effects. So I'm going to Command Tab into Adobe's After Effects. Now I'm using After Effects CS5, but remember, as long as you're using After Effects CS4 or above, you're going to be able to use Ready2Go for After Effects. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to File and I'm going to say Open Project. And obviously After Effects is going to prompt me to where the project is, so it's on the desktop. And I'm going to come right into the folder, and here it is right here, number 21, Flame Frames, HD 24. I'm going to say Open. You're going to see that After Effects is going to prompt me right away saying, well, hold on a second. This was created in Windows, so do you want me to update this file? And I'm going to say, yes, please update the file. And what's going to happen is that when After Effects opens the file, you're going to notice that it has now immediately called the file untitled.aep. So the first thing that I always recommend is to do a Command-Shift and S if you're on the Mac, Control-Shift and S on Windows to do a save. And I'm just going to save this to my desktop. And we can even just call this Flame frames KPM, just so that we know that this is the project that I'm working on. Now, one thing that's also important to keep in mind is that as soon as After Effects opens this project, it's going to remember the settings from the original Digital Juice artist that created this project. And you can see down here that they like to work in frame view. So you can see that as I come back to the beginning here, I'll just jump back and I'll just click through frame by frame. You can see that instead of it registering time code, it's actually registering frames. I don't particularly like to work like that. I like to use time code because obviously the time code in After Effects is going to represent the time code in my timeline. So what I'm going to do is simply navigate up to File. I'm going to come down to Project Settings, and you can see right here that the artist that created this was working in frames. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to work in time code, and I'm going to work in non-drop time code. And I'm just going to say OK, and as soon as I do, you'll see that my timeline has been updated, and so has my time code window over here. So that's a very handy thing to remember because in most cases when you open this, I'm pretty sure that all of the projects are set up like that. If you don't like to work that way, not a big deal, just switch those project settings over. Okay, so the next thing that I want to point out is we talked a little bit about proxies outside of After Effects. Well, it's important to understand how those work inside of After Effects as well. I'm going to come to footage and I'm going to drop the footage down, and you're going to notice that I have the elements right here that I had outside of the juicer, and you're going to notice that I have a little box beside them. Well, if I come up and I click on, we'll just use the Motion Designer's Toolkit 1 Rough Edges element, you'll see that if I click on it, there's actually two files that are associated with it. There is the main rough edges _A, and I'll just bring my project window over here a little bit. And then I have the corresponding proxy file that goes with that file. And the best part is, do you know what you need to know about proxies? Absolutely nothing. The team at Digital Juice has already set this up so you don't even need to think about it. The proxies are already in your timeline, they're already there for fast previews, and when you're going to render this file out, After Effects will automatically switch over to render it out with the full-sized animation. Okay, so that's enough about proxies. So you can see in here again, like I said, we have all of our footage. We also have some pre-comps in here as well that you're going to be working with, and we also have our texture files. Now what I'm going to do is just come here, and you can see that I don't need to double click on the main comp because the main comp is right here ready to go. And I'm just going to move this window out of the way here. Well, actually, let's just close it. And you'll see that if I take the scroll bar and I drag it down, this looks like it's a pretty complicated project. And you can see that what the team at Digital Juice has done is they've divided each one of the elements into a color-coded set of layers. So you can see that our main title here has been divided up into the red colors. They've also added markers to the timeline and given you a description of what you need to do depending on what you want to do to each one of these layers. So for example, you can see right here that if I wanted to adjust the main title, this is where I put Digital Juice Presents, what I'm going to do is you can see it says double click to edit text. So I'm going to double click and I'm going to type in Digital Juice. There we go. And for my subtitle, you can see that I can double click to edit text. I'm going to double click on it and I'm going to type in Presents, just like that. And you can see right below it, it says DJ your logo _PNG. You can alt drag the logo image source from the project window. Now, what does that mean? That's kind of confusing. Well, let's bring my elements in and you're going to see what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to press Command and I on the Mac, Control and I on Windows. I'm going to come back to the desktop to my elements and I'm just going to hold Shift and bring in all of these elements. I'm just going to say Open. And there they are, and we'll just stick them into their own folder. We'll call this Elements, just like it was on the desktop. So I want to put a Digital Juice logo in here. Why? Well, because Digital Juice does present this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I have my layer selected here, and I'm being told that if I want to replace this, all I have to do is Alt-Drag on Windows or Option-Drag on the Mac to replace this element. So let's do that. I'm going to take my new DJ logo, largest. I'm going to hold Option on the Mac, Alt on Windows, and I'm going to drag it right down here and drop it in. And you'll see that as soon as I do, it's exceptionally tiny. I can just deselect that layer here and you can see, whoa, that's pretty small. Well, obviously we can get in and now adjust this. So what I'm going to do is just adjust the scale. And you can see that what happens in the animation is it comes from nothing, it comes up to about 20, and then it drops back down to 15. So we can just roughly guess what we're going to want this to be. So let's just take our scale and let's just increase it here because we're going to want the end size to be about like that. And I'm just going to bump my size up to be half here just so we get a little bit of a cleaner view of it here. There we go. And that's not too bad for the size of the logo right there. And that's 54. Well, why don't we do this? Let's just make it 60 because I don't think 60 is going to make it too much bigger. Okay, perfect. So 60 is the final size. Now I know that it's going to come all the way up and be a little bit bigger than that and then come down to 60. So why don't we just do this? Let's just make this size here 70. Perfect. So what it's going to do now is it's going to come from nothing, and it's going to scale up. It's going to hit 70, the largest size that it's going to be. And then what it's going to do, and we'll just bump this back down to a quarter here just so that I can drag through it. And then what it's going to do is it's just going to shrink itself back down a little bit into place and fit perfectly where we're going to want it to go. So you can see how simple it was to get in and adjust the text and to get in and swap out an element. Swapping out the element was as simple as Alt dragging on Windows or Option dragging on the Mac, and adjusting the text was as simple as double clicking on it. And the great thing is that you have these locators here that are going to tell you exactly what you need to know for each layer inside the project. Okay, so let's move down to the next element, because this is where things are going to get good. If I jump down to the next element, I'm just going to click down right over top of it. You're going to see, and I'm just going to move my window back a little bit here just so we get a good look at it. This is where we have our first video zone. Now, a video can be anything. It can be actually moving video, or it can be, in the case that I used in my opening, just a still image. And you can see down here that the team at Digital Juice has only added the locators to tell you what to do in the first section, because obviously it's the same working your way down. Now for the video zone, which is represented by this layer right here, and you can see that if I turn it off, it's going to disappear. You can see that it says here Alt and drag, or in the case of the Mac, Option and drag video source from the project window. Now in my case, I'm not using video, but if I was using video, it works exactly the same. What I want to do in this case is I want to put my Ready2Go for Adobe's After Effects logo here. So all I'm going to do is simply select the Ready2Go for Adobe's After Effects. I'm going to hold Option on the Mac, Alt on Windows, and I'm going to drag it down here into my video zone. I'm going to let it go, and there you go. It's updated right away. Now, obviously, it's a little bit too big, but the great thing is that if I press U on both Mac and Windows, I can see that this layer has no keyframes associated with it. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to press S on the keyboard to open up my scale, and I'm just going to drag it down a little bit just so that it fits perfectly inside of the mask that was already created. Just like that. Perfect. Now, obviously, if I want to adjust my text, I can simply double click on it, and I'm going to type in Getting Started with Ready2Go, and I'm just going to put 4AE. Now you can see that what's happening is that my text is coming and it's going right off the screen here. So how do I adjust this? Well, a lot of people are going to get in, they're going to start trying to adjust position. I don't like to work with the position. I like to use the anchor point in this situation. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to select my text. I'm going to press A on the keyboard to call up the anchor point. That's on both Mac and Windows. And I'm just going to grab the X value and just drag it over like this. And you can see now, boom, there's my text exactly on the bar that it needs to be on, and it just slid over right on the X-axis. Now, what I can do is just click down here, and you can see in this case, everything is being controlled by the camera and null objects. So in many cases, your layers are staying perfectly still. Now, we've got one more layer to deal with here, and that is that logo with that handsome looking gentleman that I showed you at the start. And again, we're going to do exactly the same thing. Now remember, because we've already gone through this once, we're not going to see those locators again, but that's okay. I'm just going to type in with Kevin P. McAuliffe, just like that. And we're going to make sure that we got our video zone selected. I'm just going to drag my picture in there just like such. Looking pretty good. And conceivably now, if I was happy with this, I could render this out. Now you'll see that we do have some other elements here that we can either keep and put more video in, or we can simply remove it. And at this point, it's also important for us to talk about something else that is exceptionally important. And that is what you see inside of Ready2Go for After Effects is not necessarily always what you get. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if you take a look over here on the left-hand side, we have our little guy here that's looking over top of this board. Now, what this is this is the Hide Shy Layers command. Now, you'll see that it's turned on right now. So what's happening is that there's actually layers that are in here that you can't see, but if you want to get in and start tailoring the animation to your needs, you're going to need to see all of the layers. Now watch what happens when I'm just going to actually bring this up here before I turn that off. You can see here that we have a whole bunch of layers, and you can see that they're not numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're labeled 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 13, 14, meaning that there's probably layers going on in here that we can't see. And as soon as I turn off my little shy guy, you'll see that I now have all of these other layers that I didn't see before that are important to this project. The great thing is that if you're going to use these elements the way they are, you don't ever need to worry about that little shy dude. You can just leave him turned on and you're only going to see the layers that you need to see. But let me give you a hypothetical situation. Let's say I have this picture of this absolutely stunning gentleman here, and what I want to do is I want to go from there and I want to skip over these two layers and I want to go right to the end title. So what do we do? Well, if I was to come in and to simply say, okay, well, you know what? Let's just remove these layers. I'm just going to delete them. And then we're going to take these three layers here and we're going to move them down just like such. In most cases, you would think, oh, okay, well, this is going to be great. The animation is going to be done and it's not going to be any problem. But you'll see that if I click down, because I wasn't looking at all of the layers, we have a whole bunch of information and layers here that we didn't delete that are obviously not needed. So let me just undo this back to where we were. I'm just going to undo that one there, and we'll undo the deletion of the layers here just like that. So we're back to where we were. So if I wanted to tailor this animation to go right from my face into our back end here, what I have to do is very simple. I'm just going to turn on my show hidden layers. And what we're going to do is we'll come back to me here. I just, because I love looking at pictures of myself. What we're going to do is we're going to come back to the picture of me, but we're going to come right down here to the point where the transition is going to happen, because what we want to do is not just delete these layers. We want to delete all of the layers right down to there. So I'm going to select them all. I'm going to press delete. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these layers down here, and I'm going to press the left square bracket on both Mac and Windows, and that layer is going to jump right back. We're not going to notice anything happen except a little bit of stuff happening in the background, but that's okay. And what you'll see happen now is as I click through, the animation is going to happen and it's going to spin right back into the back end just like that. So you can see that by using the shy command, you can get in and really start to work with these animations and tailor them to your needs. Like I said, the reason that that function was used is because if you're going to use these elements the way they are, you don't need to see all of the extra bells and whistles that went into creating this animation. Once you want to start tailoring it to your own needs, you're going to need to make sure that you turn that layer off so you can see exactly what's going on, so you can tailor it for whatever you need it for. Now, one thing I always jokingly try to bug people about is that I always want your comments and your feedback. And the reason that I want your comments and feedback is because a lot of times you guys will put questions in there that I can answer in part 2 of my tutorial. And there was a great question that someone asked about using 720p. Now, 720p is 1280 by 720, 60 frames per second. And of course, there's no template to export from the juicer to work like that. So most people think to themselves, oh, well, I guess, I'm stuck, I can't use it. Well, that's not true. After Effects is versatile, and so is Ready2Go for After Effects. And to create a 720p 60 frame per second project is actually very simple, and I'll show this to you right now. And this can be used as a template for any type of format you happen to be working in, because we know that there's thousands of formats and thousands of frame rates out there that you might be working in, whether it's 720p 60 frames per second, whether you're doing stuff for the web. After Effects and Ready2Go can work for you. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to shorten my composition down here, because now I have it coming down to about the 1424 mark. So let me just hit Command and K on the keyboard. And I'm just going to make this 15 seconds long because I'm working in 24 frames per second. I'm going to say OK. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to create a new composition. Because what most people like to do, and let me just cancel out of this for 1 second. Most people like to hit Command and K on their keyboard and come in and start switching around the width and the height of their composition and adjusting the frame rate and stuff like that. Then they have to get into scaling stuff and it becomes a big mess. Well, you know what? Work with these compositions in the size that you exported from the juicer and then convert them after the fact. So I'm just going to say cancel here, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new composition and I'm going to make it 1280 by 720 and I'm going to make it 5994 frames per second, 15 seconds long. I'm going to say OK, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to call this comp 720p. I'm going to make sure that that comp is highlighted, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to drag the main comp into this 720p comp, and you're going to notice that as I drag through, the animation is obviously updating, but you're going to notice over here that once I hit 30, my frames keep going. Why? Because I'm dealing with 60 frames per second. You can see that I can keep scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. What I'm going to do is just scroll all the way down to the next part here, right to there. And you'll see now, and what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to come down a little bit farther. Let's come down to about the 44 frame mark. What you can simply do here, you'll see that I'm at 4 seconds and 44 frames, is that if I double click on my pre-comp, you'll see now that I'm actually at 4 seconds and 18 frames of a 24 frame comp. So you can see that with these templates inside of After Effects, you can create a 10 frame per second, 20 frame, 30 frame, 45, or 60 frame project. You can create a frame rate of whatever you want, whatever you need. And the great thing is that After Effects can convert these for you on the fly to no matter what format you want to work with. Now, obviously, if I come back to my 720p comp, you're going to notice that my frame size is massive. And what most people like to do at this point is they come in and they'll start adjusting the scale just like that. Well, what I like to do is use a bit of a shortcut. And the shortcut that I'm going to use is I'm going to press Command, Option, and F on the Mac. F as in Frank. Control, Alt, and F on Windows. And you're going to notice that what happens is that After Effects is going to take this composition and scale it down so that it fits within the frame size. And because I'm dealing with a 16:9 frame, it's going to fit perfectly in there. So I hope that the second part of my getting started with Ready2Go for Adobe's After Effects tutorial series has shown you how simple these elements are to work with inside of After Effects. Remember, the first thing that you're always going to want to check is what have these layers been tagged with. In a lot of cases, you're going to see that with the first element, you have all of the information that you need to know. Second thing that's most important is always remember the shy button. The shy button is either going to hide the layers that you don't necessarily need to see, or it's going to show you the layers that you need to see to delete elements to get this project down to the size that you need. And I'm going to throw one last little bonus in here as well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to my 720p comp, and let's say that I wanted to speed this up a little bit. Like I said before, in many cases what most people do is they're going to get into the main composition. They're going to start dragging layers and speeding stuff up and slowing it down. I don't like to work like that. Because we're dealing in progressive frame rates, 23.98, we're dealing with 59.94, what I like to do is just simply select my main comp, come up to layer, come down to time, come over to time stretch, and then I'll just punch in a number. So let's say I needed this to be 10 seconds long. So I think I'll put in a stretch factor of maybe 75. That only puts it down at 11:15. Let's do it at 60. That's not too bad, 9 seconds. I'm going to use the layer in point right over here as my hold place, and I'm going to say go, and you'll see now that this composition is now 9 seconds long. So just a little bonus there at the end to show you that by using pre-comps, you can quickly and easily slow up or speed down. You can quickly and easily speed up or slow down your footage without having to get in and muck around with all of the layers inside of the main comp. So if you have any questions, comments, or tutorial requests, you can head on over and post them in the Digital Juice forums. This has been Kevin P. McAuliffe. Thanks a lot for watching.